I'm Rosie, 68 years old, with wrinkles that tell stories of both joy and heartache. My daughter Amanda once told me my accent made her friends laugh. Please don't talk at my graduation, Mom. You embarrass me. Those words cut deeper than any knife. Little did she know what I'd been secretly preparing for months. The look on her face when I took that stage as guest speaker, priceless. Before I tell you what happened next, where are you watching from today? Drop a comment below and subscribe to hear more stories from this old woman's heart. I came to America from Vietnam in 1977, just 20 years old, with nothing but a small suitcase and big dreams. The journey across the ocean felt like traveling to another planet. Everything was different here, especially the language. Those first months in California were the hardest of my life. I worked 3 jobs, washing dishes in the morning, cleaning houses in the afternoon, and sewing at a factory at night. My hands were always raw, but not as raw as my throat from trying to form English words that felt like stones in my mouth. Every day brought new humiliations. I would practice saying vegetable over and over in my tiny apartment, but at the grocery store the word would tangle on my tongue. People would stare, some would laugh, others would speak unnecessarily loud, as if volume could bridge the gap between my Vietnamese tongue and American ears. I learned to point instead of speak, to nod instead of answer. My world became small and quiet. Then I met Jack at the factory where I sewed sleeves onto shirts. He was the maintenance man, always whistling while he fixed the machines. When my sewing machine broke down one night, he came over smiling. I tried to explain the problem, my words coming out in that choppy accent that made others turn away. But Jack listened. His head tilted, his eyes on mine, not looking away or finishing my sentences. "You speak good English," he said when I finished my broken explanation. I laughed. "No, I speak terrible." "No," he said, "you speak brave. That takes more courage than perfect grammar." After fixing my machine, Jack asked if I wanted to practice English during lunch breaks. Soon, our lunch conversations became dinner dates. Jack never corrected my pronunciation unless I asked. He said my accent was beautiful, that it told the story of my courage. When I spoke Vietnamese words to him, he tried to repeat them, making his own mistakes that made us both laugh. We married a year later, a small ceremony with Jack's family and the few Vietnamese friends I had made. His mother hugged me and said, "Welcome to the family," speaking slowly so I could understand every word. I felt accepted, accent and all. Jack and I dreamed of starting our own family. We saved every penny, working overtime, eating simple meals, never taking vacations. After 5 years, we had enough for a down payment on a small house in a good school district. "For our future children," Jack would say, patting my hand. We turned the second bedroom into a nursery, painting it yellow because we wanted to be surprised. But children didn't come easily for us. Year after year, disappointment followed disappointment. Doctors' treatments, prayers, none seemed to work. We were about to give up when the miracle happened. At 33, I became pregnant with Amanda. Jack cried when we heard her heartbeat for the first time. "That's our American baby," he said proudly, but with a Vietnamese heart. He worked double shifts during my pregnancy to save extra money, coming home to rub my swollen feet and talk to my growing belly in both English and the few Vietnamese phrases he knew. Amanda was born perfect, with Jack's blue eyes and my black hair. When the nurse placed her in my arms, I whispered to her in Vietnamese, then in English, "You are the bridge between worlds, my little one." Jack was the proudest father, taking pictures of everything Amanda did. Her first smile, first step, first word. He would show the photos to everyone at work, bragging about how smart she was. "Just like her mother," he would say. "Brave enough to make a life in a new world." Amanda was a happy child, curious about everything. She loved when I read to her, giggling at my pronunciation of certain words. "Read it again, Mommy," she would say, snuggling close. I read English storybooks with my accent, and she never seemed to mind. Sometimes I would tell her Vietnamese folk tales, and she would listen wide-eyed, asking questions about the country where I was born. Our little family was happy. I found a job at the local community center, helping other immigrants fill out paperwork and learn about American customs. The pay wasn't much, but the work was meaningful, and the hours let me be home when Amanda returned from school. Jack continued at the factory, eventually becoming a supervisor. "Never hide your heritage," Jack would tell me when I felt self-conscious about my accent at school functions. "It's who you are. It's part of what makes you beautiful." We took Amanda to Vietnamese community events where she would dance to traditional music and eat foods that Jack jokingly called too spicy for his American tongue. I taught Amanda simple Vietnamese phrases when she was a toddler. She would repeat them perfectly, her little voice wrapping around the tones that many Americans find difficult. "You're a natural," I told her proudly. "You have both worlds in you." Our home was a perfect balance of both cultures. American holidays were celebrated alongside Vietnamese traditions. We ate hamburgers one night and pho the next. Amanda seemed to thrive in this blended world, taking pride in teaching her preschool friends how to count to 10 in Vietnamese. Those early years were the happiest of my life, my accent just another part of our family's unique symphony. The first changes came when Amanda started elementary school. She made friends quickly, her natural charm and intelligence making her popular with both teachers and classmates. She came home talking about birthday parties and playground games, absorbing American childhood like a sponge. When Amanda was 8, she corrected my pronunciation for the first time. We were at the grocery store, and I asked the clerk where to find the broccoli. "Broccoli, Mom," Amanda whispered, her cheeks pink. "Not broccoli." I smiled and repeated the word correctly, thanking her for the help. But something shifted in that moment, a tiny crack in our perfect world. I noticed Amanda watching my mouth when I spoke to her teachers at school, her eyes anxious. When Amanda was 10, our world shattered. Jack had a massive heart attack while at work. By the time I got to the hospital, he was gone. My strong, kind husband, who had loved my accent and helped me build a life in America, was suddenly gone forever. I had to plan a funeral in a language that still sometimes tripped me up, had to speak through my grief to honor the man who had honored me. Amanda stood beside me at the funeral, holding my hand, but I saw how she noticed others struggling to understand me as I thanked them for coming, saw the way she winced when I mispronounced certain words in my eulogy for Jack. Her father had been my shield, my champion. Without him, my accent became exposed, vulnerable. Financial struggles followed grief. Jack's life insurance helped, but not enough. I took night shifts cleaning offices to keep our house in the good school district. I wanted Amanda to have every opportunity, even if it meant I slept only 4 hours a night. She was excelling academically, already talking about college. I would not let my daughter's future dim because her father was gone. Middle school brought new challenges. Amanda became more aware of her image, changing her hairstyle and asking for specific clothing brands. She made new friends, girls whose parents were doctors and lawyers, not immigrants who cleaned their offices at night. At her first parent-teacher conference after Jack died, Amanda insisted on coming with me. When I struggled to understand Amanda's math teacher, Amanda jumped in, translating unnecessarily. "My mom means to ask about the test next week," she would say, though I had asked something completely different. In the car afterward, I asked her why she had done that. "It's just easier if I help," she said, looking out the window instead of at me. "You know, so things go faster." Amanda spoke less and less Vietnamese at home. When I used our native language, she would answer in English. The recipes my mother had taught me, dishes Amanda once requested weekly, now met with sighs and requests for pizza or burgers instead. One day after school, I came home early from work, not feeling well. I overheard Amanda in the backyard with 2 friends. She was speaking with an exaggerated accent, mimicking the way I said certain words. Her friends were laughing. I stood frozen behind the screen door, my heart breaking as my daughter used my voice, my struggle as entertainment. That night, we had our first real argument about her cultural identity. "Why do you have to be so different?" she shouted after I confronted her. "Why can't you just speak normal English?" "This is my normal," I said, trying to stay calm. "This is who I am, who you are too." "No, it's not who I am. I'm American. I was born here. I don't want your weird foods and your funny accent and your old country stories." The next day, I found our Vietnamese decorations, the embroidered pillows and painted plates, removed from the living room and stuffed in a closet. Amanda had replaced them with posters of American pop stars. I signed up for English classes at the community college, determined to improve. My teacher, Susan, was patient and kind, reminding me of Jack. "Your accent isn't wrong," she told me. "It's just different. America is supposed to be about different voices coming together." We became friends, having coffee after class, talking about books and Amanda's changing attitude. At school pickup one day, I tried chatting with the mother of Amanda's friend, while waiting in the car line. I saw Amanda walking toward us, then stopping abruptly when she saw me speaking. She hung back, pretending not to see me, then walking slowly as if hoping I'd be done talking by the time she reached the car. When she got in, she was silent, her face tight with what I recognized as embarrassment. Loneliness became my constant companion. Without Jack, without Amanda's warmth, my days became mechanical. Work, sleep, provide. The community center job ended with budget cuts. I found work cleaning houses again, my hands returning to the raw redness of my first American days. For Amanda's 14th birthday, she wanted a party at our house. I spent days cleaning, cooking, decorating. I took extra shifts to afford the expensive cake she wanted. When the party day came, I dressed in my best clothes, excited to meet her new friends from the advanced program she'd been placed in. I was arranging snacks when I overheard Amanda introducing me to a group of girls I hadn't met before. "This is my aunt," she said, not meeting my eyes. "She's visiting." I froze a bowl of chips in my hands. Her aunt, not her mother. I was a visitor in my own home, in my own life. I said nothing, just smiled and offered the chips. Later, alone in my bedroom, while teen music pulsed through the house, I cried for the first time since Jack's funeral. High school widened the gulf between us. Amanda joined the debate team, the honor society, the student council. She bloomed academically and socially, coming home later and later, always with excuses about study groups and extracurricular activities. I worked overtime to afford her advanced placement exam fees, her debate team trips, her college preparation courses. My hands grew calloused, my back permanently stooped from cleaning toilets and scrubbing floors, but Amanda grew taller, stronger, more American with each passing day. Parents' night at her high school during sophomore year became a turning point. I dressed carefully in the blue dress Jack had always loved, practiced my English in the mirror. I was proud of my daughter's achievements, wanted to hear her teachers praise her work. But as we walked toward her English teacher, Amanda physically stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "I'll talk to Mr. Peterson," she said firmly. "You just nod, please." When I tried to ask a question about Amanda's essay on The Great Gatsby, she gripped my arm, her fingernails digging into my skin. Later she explained it away. "His questions are really complex, Mom. It's just easier this way." Amanda's new friends came from wealthy families. When they came over, they spoke quickly using slang I couldn't follow. They would exchange glances when I offered them Vietnamese spring rolls or asked them to repeat something. One girl, Jennifer, asked Amanda, "Does your mom understand English?" while I stood in the same room. One evening, Amanda hosted a dinner for her debate team partners. I spent all day cooking, making both American and Vietnamese dishes. As I brought out the food, one boy began speaking in a mockery of an Asian accent, pulling his eyes into slants with his fingers. "Me so hungry," he said. "Me want fortune cookie now." The table erupted in laughter, including Amanda. My daughter laughed at this boy's racist impression while I stood behind her, plates in hand. She did not turn around. She did not defend me. She joined in adding her own exaggerated mispronunciations to his routine. I placed the food down silently and left the room. That night, a wall went up between us, brick by brick, built of shame and betrayal. As junior year progressed, Amanda began researching colleges, all of them, far from home. "NYU has a great pre-law program," she would say, or "Boston University has amazing internship opportunities." Never schools in California, never places where she might run into someone who knew her Vietnamese mother. One afternoon while Amanda was at debate practice, I was gathering laundry from her room when a notebook fell from her desk. It opened to a page titled "Goals for the Future." Among her list was the line, "Get accepted to East Coast school, escape my embarrassing home for good." My hands trembled as I read those words. Embarrassing home. The home I had cleaned houses to maintain. The home her father had been so proud to buy. The home where she had once giggled at bedtime stories, no matter how imperfect my pronunciation. When she came home, I confronted her, the notebook in hand. "Is this what you think of me? Of our home?" Her face flushed with anger, not shame. "You went through my things. That's private. Answer me, Amanda. Am I your embarrassment? Something to escape?" She snatched the notebook. "You don't understand what it's like. Everyone has perfect American parents who speak perfect English and know all the right things to say, and I have this. This is your mother who loves you, who works 3 jobs so you can join debate and take AP classes. I never asked you to work 3 jobs. I never asked for any of this. She gestured wildly around our modest living room. I just want to be normal. Is that so much to ask? For Amanda's sweet 16, she wanted a party at a restaurant with her friends. I saved for months to afford it. The day before she came to me with an unusual request. Mom, tomorrow, at the restaurant, could you just serve the food and not talk too much? Jennifer's parents are coming and her dad works at the university I want to apply to. I stared at my beautiful daughter, this stranger I had carried in my body. You want me to pretend to be a server at your birthday party that I am paying for? She had the decency to look down. Not a server exactly. Just be quiet. Your English gets worse when you're nervous, and this is important for my future. During that party, I retreated to the restaurant bathroom twice to cry silently in a stall. I watched Amanda charming the parents of her friends, her English flawless, not a trace of my accent in her voice. I served cake with a smile frozen on my face, speaking only when directly addressed, keeping my answers short to hide the accent I could never fully shed. College tour trips became exercises in erasure. In Boston, Amanda introduced me to a tour guide as our family friend who's helping me visit schools. At Princeton, she walked several steps ahead, pretending we weren't together until necessary paperwork required my signature. Despite her emotional cruelty, Amanda's academic accomplishments made me proud. She maintained a 4.0 GPA, scored nearly perfect on her SAT, and was named National Merit Scholar. At night, alone in my room, I would look at her certificates and awards, tracing my finger over her name, wondering how the baby who once found comfort in my accented lullabies had become this person ashamed to call me mother. When scholarship applications began, I offered to help Amanda brainstorm for her essays. She refused, closing her laptop whenever I entered her room. One day, I caught a glimpse of her screen, an essay titled Overcoming Obstacles. I read only one line before she slammed the laptop shut. Despite challenging circumstances, I have succeeded through self-reliance and determination. Not a word about her immigrant mother working multiple jobs. Not a word about the obstacles I had overcome, so she wouldn't have any. In her narrative, she was a self-made success story emerging from nothing through her own grit alone. The final straw came when Amanda received her acceptance to Harvard University with a partial scholarship. I was bursting with pride despite everything, planning a special dinner at home with her favorite foods. Could we go to Bella Italia instead? She asked when I told her my plans. I want to celebrate with some friends too. I agreed, wanting her to enjoy her moment. At the restaurant, 5 of her friends joined us along with 2 sets of parents. As we were seated, Amanda leaned over to me. "These are Jennifer's parents," she whispered. "Her dad is an alumni interviewer for Harvard. Just try not to speak much English. Nod and smile, pretend you don't understand well." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Please, Mom, just for tonight, pretend your English is worse than it is. It will make my story more impressive if they think I had to overcome a non-English speaking household." In that moment, I saw how completely my daughter had erased me, had turned me into a prop in her personal narrative of triumph. All my sacrifices, all my love had been reduced to an obstacle she had overcome, a disadvantage that made her success more remarkable. I excused myself to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and looked in the mirror. What would Jack think of this moment? What would he say to the child we had raised together, the child who now saw her mother's very voice as something shameful? When I returned to the table, I did as Amanda asked. I nodded. I smiled. I spoke broken English when directly addressed. I played the role of the foreign mother who couldn't assimilate, couldn't adapt, couldn't belong. I watched my daughter shine in the reflected glow of others' approval, never once acknowledging the cost. Senior year arrived with Amanda named valedictorian of her class. Despite the distance between us, my heart swelled with pride. My daughter, the daughter of an immigrant who had come to America with nothing, would give the graduation speech. I imagined sitting in the audience watching her shine. Whatever pain existed between us, this accomplishment belonged to both of us. One evening in May, just weeks before graduation, Amanda brought home information about the ceremony. Sitting at our kitchen table, she detailed the schedule, where families should park, what time to arrive. "They're giving us 4 tickets for family," she said, not meeting my eyes. I gave one to Jennifer's parents since her brother is coming home from college to attend. And one for David's mom since she helped with all those college applications. David was her debate partner, the one who had mocked my accent at that dinner party 2 years ago. So, one ticket for me, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. Amanda pushed her food around her plate. Actually, I was thinking, it's going to be really crowded and hot, and the ceremony is super long. Maybe it would be better if you just skipped it. We could celebrate after just the two of us. Skip my only child's high school graduation, where you are giving the valedictorian speech. She finally looked up, her face set in determination. Mom, please don't be difficult. You know large events make you uncomfortable, and English speeches are hard for you to follow. Amanda, I have been waiting for this day since you started kindergarten. Nothing could keep me from being there. She put down her fork with a clatter. Fine, but please don't talk to my teachers or my friends' parents. Just watch the ceremony and we can leave right after. Are you ashamed of me? I asked directly the question that had hung between us for years. No, she sighed. Your accent, Mom. It makes people uncomfortable. They have to work so hard to understand you. It's embarrassing, okay, I said it. Your English embarrasses me. Please don't talk at my graduation. You'll embarrass me on the most important day of my life. The words hit me like physical blows. Your English embarrasses me. The most important day of my life would be ruined by my voice, by the sound of my journey, my struggle, my love. I stood up slowly. I have spent 18 years making sure you had everything you needed. I have cleaned toilets and scrubbed floors and worked night shifts so you could have opportunities. And my accent embarrasses you. Mom, I didn't mean. Yes, you did mean it. You have meant it for years now. I walked out of the kitchen, my dinner untouched. In my bedroom, surrounded by photos of our family when Amanda was small, I broke down. Heaving sobs racked my body as I clutched a picture of 3-year-old Amanda proudly introducing me at her preschool special person day. This, my mommy, she had said then, her little arm around my waist. She comes from Vietnam and makes the best noodles and knows everything. What had happened to that little girl? When had my voice transformed from something she loved into something that shamed her? I found an old elementary school program where Amanda had performed in a cultural celebration. She had insisted on wearing a traditional Vietnamese áo dai that I had sewn for her, had recited a poem in both English and the halting Vietnamese I had taught her. The audience had applauded wildly and she had beamed with pride. Where was that child who had once embraced both sides of her heritage? That night became a turning point. As I dried my tears, a plan began forming in my mind. I had always accommodated Amanda's shame, had stepped back, stayed quiet, made myself small to help her feel more American, more acceptable. But perhaps my accommodation had been a disservice to us both. The next morning, I called Amanda's school and asked for an appointment with Principal Williams. A kindly man in his 50s, he welcomed me into his office with genuine warmth. Mrs. Wynne, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Amanda is one of our finest students. Thank you. She works very hard. I was careful with my pronunciation, as always, in professional settings. What can I help you with today? I took a deep breath. I understand there was a cancellation for your graduation ceremony, the guest speaker from the city council. Principal Williams looked surprised. Yes, Councilman Bridges had a scheduling conflict. We're still looking for a replacement. Do you have a suggestion? Yes, I said, gathering my courage. Me? He blinked. You want to be our graduation speaker? I told him everything. About Amanda's shame, about her request that I remain silent at graduation, about years of watching my daughter erase her Vietnamese heritage, and my contribution to her success. I didn't speak with anger, just honesty. When I finished, Principal Williams was quiet for a long moment. Then he leaned forward. Mrs. Wynne, I think having you as our speaker would send a powerful message to our students about respect, diversity, and the true meaning of the American dream. But may I ask, are you comfortable speaking to an audience of over 1,000 people? I will be, I said with determination. But I need to keep this a secret from Amanda. He nodded slowly. We don't finalize the printed programs until a week before graduation. We can list you simply as special guest speaker. But Mrs. Wynne, are you sure this is the right approach? My daughter needs to see me as I am Mr. Williams. not just as her embarrassing mother, but as a woman with a voice worth hearing. As I left his office, I made a call to Professor James, a speech pathologist recommended by Susan, my friend from the English classes. I explained my situation and asked if he could help me perfect my American accent in just 3 months. "It's possible," he said after our initial assessment, "but it would require intensive work, hours of practice daily, and it might not be perfect by graduation." "I will work as hard as necessary," I told him. "Cost is not an issue." This was a lie. The quoted fee for 3 months of private intensive lessons would drain the small savings I had put aside for emergencies. But this was an emergency of the heart more important than any financial security. And so began the most grueling 3 months of my life. By day, I cleaned houses and worked at a new job stocking shelves at a grocery store. By evening, I met with Professor James for 2-hour sessions, learning to reshape my mouth to hear subtle differences in vowel sounds, to retrain muscles that had formed Vietnamese words for 40 years before attempting English ones. Professor James was demanding but kind. Again, he would say when I mispronounced a word, having me repeat it 20-30 times until it sounded authentically American. He recorded my speech, played it back, pointing out every tiny deviation from standard American pronunciation. At night after Amanda was asleep, I practiced for additional 4 hours, watching news anchors and mimicking their exact intonations, recording myself listening, critically adjusting, trying again. My mouth and throat ached from the unfamiliar positions and movements. Sometimes I would cry from frustration and exhaustion, but then I would remember Amanda's words. "Your English embarrasses me," and I would wipe my tears and begin again. The physical toll was immense. Working full-time while practicing pronunciation 6 hours daily left me perpetually exhausted. I lost weight, developed headaches, found it hard to sleep when I finally allowed myself to rest. But I was driven by a mother's determination to be seen, to be heard, to be respected by the child for whom I had sacrificed everything. 2 months into our training, Professor James stopped me mid-sentence during practice. "Say that again," he said, leaning forward. I repeated the phrase, a particularly difficult one, with several R sounds that had always given me trouble. "Perfect," he said, breaking into a smile. "Rosie, that was perfect. Not good, not improved, but perfect. Native level perfect." I didn't believe him until he played back the recording. The voice I heard didn't sound like me at all. It sounded like any American-born woman, the accent flawless, not a trace of Vietnam in the pronunciation. "This is the breakthrough we've been waiting for," Professor James said. "From here, it's just practice, practice, practice to make it consistent." The content of my speech took shape alongside my new voice. I wrote about identity, about the courage it takes to preserve one's heritage while adapting to a new culture. I wrote about sacrifice, about the different forms of love, about seeing people for who they truly are. I avoided direct references to Amanda, making my message universal, while knowing she would hear it personally. I memorized every word, practicing, until I could recite it flawlessly, even when nervous or tired. Professor James helped me with pacing, with emphasis, with the small pauses that make a speech compelling. "You're not just learning to pronounce words," he told me. "You're learning to move people with your voice." Throughout these months, I maintained my normal accented English around Amanda. Our relationship remained strained with brief, functional conversations about household matters and graduation logistics. She seemed relieved that I had stopped fighting her on her request that I remain silent at graduation. 1 week before the ceremony, the official invitation arrived. Amanda handed it to me with a post-it note attached. "Please sit in row S. It's toward the back, but has a good view." Not close enough to embarrass her, I supposed, but with a good view so I could fulfill my maternal duty of watching her big moment. If only she knew what I had planned for her big moment. If only she knew the hours of pain and practice I had endured to give her something she never expected, something she might not even want: her mother standing tall, speaking perfect English, refusing to be erased. The final month before graduation was the most intense. Professor James increased our sessions to 3 hours daily, focusing on consistency under pressure. "When you're nervous, you'll revert to old habits," he warned. "We need to make this new pronunciation so automatic that even under extreme stress, you maintain it." We worked on breathing techniques to control nervousness, on maintaining proper mouth positions, even when emotions ran high. The muscles in my face and throat were constantly sore from the unfamiliar movements, but I pushed through the discomfort driven by determination. My daily routine became mechanical. Wake at 5, practice pronunciation for an hour. Work my morning shift cleaning offices. Meet Professor James for lunch sessions. Work my afternoon shift at the grocery store, come home to make dinner for Amanda. Then retreat to my room to loose lush cleaning offices. Practice for 4 more hours before collapsing into exhausted sleep around midnight. Through our intensive work, Professor James and I developed an unexpected friendship. During a Saturday session, he shared why he had agreed to take on my unusual request. My mother was German, he told me. She came to America after marrying my father, a U.S. soldier. Her accent was thick and I was like Amanda. He looked down, shame clouding his features. I asked her not to come to my baseball games, because the other kids mocked her cheering. I would pretend not to know what she was saying when we were in public. What changed, I asked. She died when I was in college. Cancer. His voice broke slightly. I never got to tell her how sorry I was, how proud I should have been of her courage. That's why I became a speech pathologist, specializing in accent modification. But not to erase identities like I tried to erase hers, to give people choices control over how they present themselves. His story strengthened my resolve. This wasn't just about shocking Amanda or getting revenge for her hurtful behavior. It was about reclaiming my voice, about asserting my right to be heard on my own terms. The breakthroughs in my speech came alongside painful setbacks. Some days, no matter how hard I tried, certain sounds remained stubbornly Vietnamese-influenced. The TH sound was particularly challenging, as it doesn't exist in my native language. I would practice for hours, my tongue between my teeth repeating the this, that those until my mouth cramped painfully. Professor James taught me exercises to strengthen the specific muscles needed for American pronunciation. I did them constantly any moment I was alone, stretching my lips, shifting my tongue, humming, to adjust resonance in my nasal cavities. I probably looked insane to anyone watching, but I didn't care. My phone became filled with recordings of my practice sessions. I would listen to them while cleaning houses, analyzing every syllable, noting where I needed to improve. The contrast between my natural speech and my practiced American accent grew more dramatic by the day. At home, Amanda became increasingly distant as graduation approached. She was busy with final exams, with valedictorian preparations, with planning her summer before Harvard. She barely noticed my absences or my exhaustion. When we did speak, I maintained my natural accent, giving no hint of what was coming. Susan, my friend from the ESL class, became my emotional support during this challenging time. She helped me practice my speech, offering feedback on content and delivery. "You're not just changing your accent," she observed, after a particularly good practice session. "You're standing differently, holding your head higher." She was right. Something beyond my pronunciation was transforming. Years of shrinking myself, of accommodating shame that should never have been mine to carry, were falling away. I was reclaiming not just my voice, but my presence, my right to be fully seen. 2 weeks before graduation, I went shopping for the perfect outfit. I chose a tailored blue suit that reminded me of traditional Vietnamese colors while appearing thoroughly American in cut and style. I splurged on proper styling, wanting every detail to be perfect for my moment. The final dress rehearsal with Professor James came 1 week before graduation. I delivered my entire speech from memory, maintaining perfect American pronunciation throughout, even when he deliberately tried to fluster me with interruptions and unexpected questions. When I finished, he stood silent for a long moment. "Rosie," he finally said, "that was flawless. If I didn't know your story, I would never guess you weren't born and raised in the Midwest. You've achieved what many thought impossible in such a short time." I felt tears in my eyes, tears of pride and exhaustion and vindication. "Thank you for believing this was possible." "No," he said firmly. "Thank you for showing me what determination looks like. Your daughter may not appreciate what you've done, at least not immediately, but I want you to know that I am in awe of your achievement." 3 days before graduation, I met secretly with Principal Williams to finalize details. We reviewed the auditorium layout, the order of speakers, the microphone setup. I would speak immediately after Amanda's valedictorian address, a juxtaposition that couldn't be more perfect or more terrifying. "The programs have been printed," Principal Williams told me, showing me where I was listed simply as special guest speaker. Amanda hasn't asked who's replacing Councilman Bridges, so our secret is safe. Thank you for taking this chance, I said. I know it's unconventional. Mrs. Wynne, in 30 years of education, I've learned that sometimes unconventional approaches are exactly what's needed. Whatever happens, I believe your voice deserves to be heard. On the night before graduation, Amanda brought her cap and gown home, modeling it briefly before carefully hanging it up. Remember, ceremony starts at 10, she reminded me, but parking gets crazy, so you should arrive by 9. I will be there, I promised. And Mom, she hesitated. About what I said before, about not talking to anyone. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. It's a big day, with college scouts and local officials there. I understand, I said, using my natural accent one final time. I won't embarrass you. After she went to bed, I practiced my speech one last time, recording it and sending it to Professor James for final review. His response came quickly. Perfection. Tomorrow you will shine. I slept little that night, my mind cycling through every possible scenario for the next day. Would Amanda be mortified, angry? Would she see this as the ultimate betrayal or as an act of love? Would this heal the rift between us or widen it permanently? By morning, I had no answers, only the certainty that I had to follow through. Amanda left early with friends wanting to prepare with her fellow student council members. I dressed carefully in my blue suit, applied subtle makeup, and styled my hair in a conservative American style. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Not because of the clothes or hair, but because of the confidence in my posture, the certainty in my eyes. I arrived at the school early as planned, slipping in through a side entrance where Principal Williams was waiting. He escorted me to a small office near the auditorium, where I would wait until my introduction. Are you nervous? He asked kindly. Terrified, I admitted, but also ready. The auditorium is already filling up. It should be a full house. Over 1,000 people would hear my new voice today, but only one person's reaction truly mattered. I listened through the office door as the ceremony began. The procession of graduates, the national anthem, the principal's welcome. I closed my eyes, running through my speech, silently feeling the now familiar shapes of American English in my mouth. When Amanda was introduced as valedictorian, I cracked the door open slightly, watching my beautiful daughter take the stage to enthusiastic applause. Her speech was eloquent, talking about perseverance, about overcoming obstacles, about forging one's own path. Not once did she mention her immigrant mother or her late father. In her narrative, she was self-made, self-reliant. As she concluded to standing applause, my heart pounded so hard I feared it might be audible. Principal Williams approached the podium as Amanda returned to her seat in the front row. Thank you, Amanda, for those inspiring words, he said. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our special guest speaker. Someone who truly embodies the American dream, who knows firsthand the power of education, determination, and courage to transform lives. Please welcome Mrs. Rosian Wynne. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage, my eyes immediately finding Amanda in the front row. Her expression shifted from confusion to shock, her mouth falling open as she realized what was happening. I approached the podium, adjusted the microphone, and looked out at the sea of faces. Good morning, I said, my voice ringing out in perfect, flawless American English. For those who don't know me, I am Amanda Wynne's mother. A collective gasp rippled through the auditorium. From the front row, Amanda stared at me, her face a mixture of disbelief and mortification. But I had not come this far to turn back now. Good morning, I repeated, my voice steady and clear in my flawless American accent. For those who don't know me, I am Amanda Wynne's mother. The auditorium fell silent, hundreds of eyes fixed on me. In the front row, Amanda sat frozen, her face a mask of shock and confusion. I looked directly at her for a moment, then addressed the wider audience. I came to America from Vietnam in 1977, 20 years old and alone. My first job paid $2 an hour washing dishes in a restaurant where customers complained if I spoke because they couldn't understand my accent. At night, I would practice English, repeating words until my throat hurt, determined to build a life in this country that had both frightened and fascinated me. My eyes swept across the crowd, making brief connections with parents nodding in recognition of immigrant struggles they knew firsthand or had heard from their own parents. The American dream isn't about erasing who you were to become something new. It's about bringing your whole self to this country of possibility and finding a way to belong without disappearing. It's about sacrifice that comes from love, not shame. I spoke about the courage it takes to speak up in a language not your own, about the resilience needed to face daily microaggressions with dignity. I shared stories of small victories like opening my first bank account alone or advocating for better working conditions without a translator. We often talk about success as if it's a straight line, a direct path from struggle to triumph. But real life isn't so tidy. Real growth happens in the messy middle, in the stumbles, and restarts in the moments when you think you can't possibly continue but somehow find the strength to take one more step. Throughout my speech, I maintained perfect pronunciation, my American accent never faltering. I could see whispers spreading through the audience as people realized what they were witnessing. In the front row, Amanda's initial shock was giving way to something more complex, her eyes now fixed on me with an intensity that made my heart ache. Identity isn't fixed, it evolves. It should expand to embrace new experiences without discarding what came before. When we reject parts of ourselves, when we pretend to be something we're not to please others, we don't become more whole. We fragment. We diminish. I was careful not to make my words a direct accusation against Amanda. This wasn't about public humiliation or revenge. It was about truth, about reclaiming my voice, about being seen fully. I understand the pressure young people feel to fit in, to be accepted. I understand the complex emotions of growing up between cultures, of wanting to belong so desperately that you might push away the very things that make you uniquely you. This isn't a judgment. It's an acknowledgement that becoming your authentic self is difficult, messy work. As I continued, I saw Amanda's friends turning to look at her, recognition dawning on their faces. These were the same young people who had laughed at exaggerated impressions of my accent, who had made me feel small in my own home. Now they were witnessing something, none of them had expected something, that challenged their assumptions about the quiet, accented mother they had dismissed. To those of you who feel embarrassed by your roots, remember, they gave you wings. The struggles of your parents, your grandparents, your ancestors are not burdens to overcome. They are gifts of strength, of perspective, of resilience that many never receive. Honor them even as you forge your own path. My voice grew stronger, more passionate, as I built toward my conclusion. This was the heart of my message, the truth I had crossed oceans and endured decades of struggle to earn the right to share. Love takes many forms. Sometimes it's loud and demonstrative. Sometimes it's quiet and sacrificial. Sometimes it's stepping back to let someone find their way. And sometimes it's stepping forward to speak truth, even when that truth might be difficult to hear. Tears glistened in the eyes of many audience members now. I saw parents nodding, teenagers shifting uncomfortably, recognizing perhaps their own treatment of family members they had deemed embarrassing or old-fashioned. The most profound form of love I know is this: seeing someone fully, completely, with all their complexities and contradictions, and choosing them anyway. Choosing them every day, even when it's hard. Even when they cannot yet see you in return. In the front row, Amanda was crying openly, now silent tears streaming down her face as she watched me speak. I wanted to go to her, to hold her as I had when she was small, but this moment required completion. This speech needed to be finished. Graduates, as you leave high school today, I challenge you to live authentically. To speak your truth with courage, yes, but also to listen for the truths others are trying to share. To recognize that behind every accent, every cultural difference, every tradition that seems strange to you, there is a story worth hearing, a person worth knowing. I paused, looking directly at Amanda again. And to remember that sometimes the people who love you most are the ones you've stopped seeing clearly. Look again. They might surprise you. As I thanked the audience and stepped back from the podium, there was a moment of silence. Then from the section where Amanda's friends sat, one student stood and began to applaud. Jennifer, the girl whose parents Amanda had given my graduation ticket to, was on her feet clapping with genuine admiration. One by one, others joined her until the entire auditorium was giving me a standing ovation. All except Amanda, who remained, seated, her expression unreadable through her tears. Principal Williams returned to the podium, clearly moved. Thank you, Mrs. Nguyen, for those powerful words, and for demonstrating so beautifully the transformation that determination and courage can create. As I walked off stage, my legs trembling with adrenaline and emotion, I caught Amanda's eye one final time. In that brief connection, I saw confusion hurt amazement, and something that might have been the beginning of understanding. Whatever came next between us, I had spoken my truth. I had refused to be silent. I had reclaimed my voice. In the hallway outside the auditorium, Professor James was waiting, having slipped in to witness the culmination of our work together. "Magnificent," he whispered, embracing me briefly. "Not a single slip. But more importantly, you moved them. You changed minds today." The rest of the ceremony continued without me. I waited in the small office where I had prepared, unsure what to do next, uncertain how Amanda would react when it was over. Part of me wanted to leave, to give her space to process what had happened. But I had spent too many years accommodating her shame. I would stay. I would face whatever came next. When the ceremony ended, and graduates began filing out to meet their families, I stood in the hallway, visible but not imposing. Parents and students I had never met approached me, congratulating me on my speech, thanking me for my words. Teachers shook my hand, looked me in the eye with new respect. In those moments, I was not the embarrassing immigrant mother. I was Rosie Nguyen, a woman with something valuable to say. And then through the crowd, I saw Amanda searching her cap, slightly askew her eyes, scanning the hallway until they found me. She stood frozen for a moment, then began moving toward me, her expression still unreadable. Whatever came next would determine the future of our relationship, the possibility of healing the wounds we had inflicted on each other over years of misunderstanding and shame. I straightened my shoulders and waited for my daughter, ready at last to be truly seen. The crowd seemed to part as Amanda made her way toward me, creating an island of quiet in the chaotic celebration around us. She stopped a few feet away, her graduation gown swaying slightly, her face still streaked with dried tears. "Mom." Her voice was small, uncertain, as if confirming I was really the same person she had known all her life. "Yes, Amanda." I maintained the perfect American accent, showing her this was not a fluke or momentary achievement. "How did you? When did you?" She gestured vaguely at me, at my voice, at the transformation she had just witnessed. 3 months ago. After you asked me not to speak at your graduation because I would embarrass you." She flinched as her own words were repeated back to her. "I didn't mean." "You did mean it," I said not unkindly, and it broke my heart. People continued to pass by, some, glancing curiously at our intense conversation. "Can we go somewhere more private?" Amanda asked. I nodded and followed her to an empty classroom nearby. As she closed the door behind us, the sounds of celebration became muffled, leaving us in uneasy quiet. Amanda turned to face me, her graduation cap now removed, held tightly in nervous hands. "That speech, your voice. I don't understand. How is this possible?" "Private lessons. Every day for 3 months. While you were at school and after you went to bed. Professor James is one of the best speech pathologists specializing in accent modification. He helped me achieve what you wanted all along, a mother who sounds American." "But why didn't you tell me? Why make it this public surprise? Would you have believed me if I had told you? Or would you have found another reason why I shouldn't speak at your graduation?" Amanda looked down, unable to deny the truth in my question. After a long pause, she asked in a small voice, "How many hours to change your accent like that?" 6 hours every day, while working 2 jobs. My mouth and throat hurt constantly for months. I wasn't trying to make her feel guilty, just stating facts. 6 hours daily, her eyes widened as she calculated. That's more than a full-time job. It was worth every minute to finally be heard, to not be your embarrassment anymore. Amanda's face crumpled, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." The words came out between sobs. "What I said to you, how I treated you. I was horrible." I didn't rush to comfort her or dismiss her apology. These tears were necessary. This recognition of harm done was part of our healing. "Yes," I agreed simply. "It was horrible. For years you made me feel like the greatest gift I could give you was my silence, my invisibility." She nodded, accepting this truth without defense. "I don't know why I became so ashamed. When I was little, I loved your accent. I loved everything about you. You became ashamed because the world taught you to be, because fitting in seemed more important than honoring your roots, because it was easier to reject me than to defend me. We stood in silence for several moments, the weight of years of hurt and misunderstanding heavy between us. Then Amanda did something that surprised me. She stepped forward and took my hands in hers. "Can I hear your real voice again? Your natural accent? I've missed it even though I pretended not to." It was my turn to feel tears forming. I switched back to my natural Vietnamese accented English, the one I had spent 3 months methodically erasing. "This is who I really am, Amanda. Both voices are mine now. I can choose which to use when to use them. But this is the voice that has loved you since before you were born." Amanda broke down completely, then falling into my arms like she hadn't done since she was a child. I held her tightly, feeling her body shake with sobs. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I was so cruel to you, after everything you've done for me, after all your sacrifices." "Yes," I agreed, stroking her hair. "But we can heal from here if you're willing to truly see me now." When her tears subsided, we sat at student desks facing each other, beginning the first honest conversation we'd had in years. I told her about the speech lessons, about the physical pain and exhaustion about Professor James, and his own story of regret over treating his German mother the same way Amanda had treated me. He never got to apologize to her, I explained. She died while he was still ashamed of her accent. "I don't want that to be us," Amanda whispered. "I don't want to lose you before I make this right." The graduation celebration continued without us as we talked for over an hour in that empty classroom. Amanda shared how pressure from friends, from social media, from college admissions expectations had made her obsessed with crafting a perfect American image. "But that doesn't excuse how I treated you," she acknowledged. "Nothing excuses that." When we finally emerged, the crowd had thinned considerably. Amanda's friends spotted us and approached cautiously, clearly unsure of the situation. "Mrs. Nguyen, your speech was amazing," Jennifer said, genuine admiration in her voice. "I had no idea you could speak like that." "Thank you," I replied in my perfect American accent, then switched to my natural one. "But I can also speak like this. Both are equally valid." Jennifer looked embarrassed, likely remembering her own participation in mocking my accent. But before she could respond, Amanda surprised me again. "My mom is brilliant," she said firmly, putting her arm through mine. "And I've been an ungrateful daughter who couldn't see what was right in front of me." She turned to address all her friends. "I'm sorry I laughed when you mocked her accent. I'm sorry I joined in. It was wrong and I was wrong." Her friends shifted uncomfortably, but Amanda wasn't finished. "My mom speaks 2 languages perfectly. Most of us can barely handle one. She built a life here from nothing so I could have everything. There's nothing embarrassing about that. The only embarrassing thing is how long it took me to be proud of her." I could have cried again at her words, at this public declaration that reversed years of shame and hiding. Instead, I squeezed her hand and smiled. The graduation party that evening became something unexpected. Instead of asking me to stay quiet or blend into the background, Amanda introduced me proudly to everyone. "This is my mom, Rosie," she would say. "She gave the guest speech today." Later, as the party wound down, Amanda found me sitting alone on the back porch of her friend's house. "Mom, could you talk to me in your natural accent again? I mean your regular one, the one I grew up with." "Of course," I said, letting my Vietnamese inflections return. "But why?" "Because it sounds like home," she said simply. "Like my childhood. Like love." I explained that both accents were now part of me. I can choose which to use depending on the situation. That's the gift Professor James gave me, not erasing my identity, but expanding my choices. That summer, before Amanda left for Harvard, became a time of healing and reconnection. To my surprise, she asked me to teach her Vietnamese cooking and to continue the language lessons I had started when she was small. We spent evenings in the kitchen, my accented voice, naming ingredients as Amanda repeated them, both of us laughing at her pronunciation attempts. "This is hard," she admitted after struggling with Vietnamese tones. "I can't believe you learned English as an adult." With no formal lessons for years, I reminded her. Just practice and determination. "And I complained about French class with professional teachers and language apps," she said, shaking her head at her own privilege. In July, I used some of my savings to take Amanda to Vietnam before she left for college. Seeing my homeland through her eyes, watching her connect with her heritage in the country of her ancestors, healed something deep within me. She was respectful, curious, eager to learn about the culture she had rejected for so long. In a small village outside Hanoi, we visited distant relatives who embraced Amanda as family, despite never having met her before. "You look like your grandmother," my elderly aunt told her in Vietnamese, touching Amanda's cheek gently. When Amanda asked me to translate, tears formed in her eyes at the connection to a grandmother she had never known. "I wish I had asked you more about our family," she said that night in our small hotel room. "About your life, before America." "We have time," I assured her. "Not all stories need to be told at once." Before leaving for Harvard, Amanda showed me her revised college essay, the one she would use for scholarship applications at school. Gone was the narrative of overcoming obstacles alone. In its place was an honest reflection on cultural identity, on the immigrant experience through both mother and daughter perspectives, on the journey of rejection and return. "I want people to know the real story," she said. "About you, about us." My friendship with Professor James continued after graduation. He invited me to speak to his accent modification clients, sharing my experience from both sides, emphasizing that the goal wasn't erasure, but expansion. Not shame, but choice. Principal Williams connected me with the school district's parent engagement program, where I began volunteering to help immigrant parents navigate the school system, offering translation and cultural context. For the first time, I was using both my Vietnamese heritage and my American experience as strengths rather than keeping them separated. When Parents' Weekend came at Harvard that fall, Amanda introduced me to her professors and new friends with evident pride. "My mom works with immigrant families," she would say. "She's helping reshape how schools engage with multilingual parents." What began as volunteer work eventually became a paid position with the school district, then expanded into consulting for schools across the state. My story of linguistic transformation became part of workshops on cultural sensitivity and immigrant parent engagement. 5 years passed quickly. Amanda studied international relations with a focus on immigration policy, her own experience informing her academic interests. For her college graduation, she asked me to speak again, but this time with a new proposal. "I want us to speak together," she suggested. "You and your natural accent, me attempting Vietnamese. A dual-language presentation about bridges between cultures." Standing on that Ivy League stage beside my daughter, alternating between languages, between accents, between perspectives, I felt the journey come full circle. The audience of distinguished academics and proud families gave us a standing ovation, but the only approval that mattered was the look of love and respect in my daughter's eyes. Together, we established a small foundation to support immigrant families, focusing particularly on parent-child relationships during cultural transition. The painful journey Amanda and I had experienced became a roadmap for others, helping them avoid the pitfalls of shame and rejection we had navigated. Now, years later, Amanda works with immigrant communities herself, her Harvard degree and personal experience combining to make her an effective advocate. When she visits schools with large immigrant populations, she often begins by saying, "My mother came to America with nothing but courage and determination. I almost lost her wisdom because I was too embarrassed to listen. Don't make my mistake." What I've learned through this journey is that parental love requires letting children make their own mistakes, even painful ones that hurt us deeply. Amanda needed to reject her heritage before she could truly embrace it. She needed to be ashamed of my accent before she could take pride in it. The path wasn't straight, but it led us to a deeper, more authentic relationship built on mutual respect rather than obligation. The greatest irony is that my accent, once the source of such shame for my daughter, has become our most powerful tool for connecting with others. In our work with immigrant families, my ability to switch between accents helps newcomers feel comfortable while ensuring school officials understand clearly. What was once my greatest vulnerability has become my unique strength. Have you ever misjudged someone because of how they spoke, or felt embarrassed by a loved one who seemed too different? Share your experience in the comments below. Sometimes our deepest wounds become our greatest purpose when we have the courage to face them honestly. If this story touched you, please subscribe to hear more from this old woman who now speaks with many voices but a single truth. Like and share if you believe that authentic voices in all their accents and variations deserve to be heard.